If you could just explain to us your role within your company and how you're currently using automation and AI, or your goals for that in the future. So we'll start off with you, Jarrod.
All right, so my company is one of the world's largest ag companies. We have 800 locations, over 300 manufacturing facilities around the world, roughly 20-some thousand employees. If you haven't heard of the company, I'm sure you've eaten something from our company or that's passed through our company. So the way we approach AI, I was actually brought on about 3.5 years ago to start the Competency Center. So I moved my family out from Seattle, joined the company in northern Kentucky, which I'm originally from California, worked out in New York quite often, so it was a new thing for me. So the opportunities within agriculture are huge, and what we do within a company from a global scale is massive. Much of my work was in the financial industry, but coming here, I saw the opportunities, so I'm actually very, very privileged and happy with what we can do, with food sustainability and increasing, safety of the whole food chain.
All right, and break it down for us in terms of AI. So how are you actually using AI technology to get food onto our tables in a different way or a quicker way?
Well, there's so many opportunities in terms of efficiencies. So I'd say from a strategic point of view, we look for opportunities. And the main thing we need to look at from a strategic point of view when you do opportunities, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the challenge you're trying to address? What's the technology that you can use to solve those problems? But in order to do things from an AI perspective, to implement them, you need a collaborative effort with a whole lot of different teams. And many times historically, people just say, oh, let's go very surgical, very quick. But we have to look at it from a system perspective, wide. You hear things like in the past, like RPA, let's go very surgical. Well, to really get the benefit from an AI perspective with the tools that we can enable now, we have to look across the entire company, and it's broad. So you have to involve a lot of different people, and you get their perspective. You get a diverse set of perspectives. So when you implement these kinds of technologies, it's not a one-time shot. These things are meant to scale. And so when you get a diverse set, it's not something you just implement and then you monitor and you're making sure it's being used correctly, but something that can be expanded and built on and mature. It's fascinating.
And Paudie, talk to us about Boston Scientific. So you make a range of medical devices and you run the supply chain there. So talk to us about how you're using AI in your business.
Yeah, so Boston Scientific is a reasonably large med device company. And in the supply chain, we have about 24,000 employees, much tighter factory network, so maybe 15 or 16 factories. I've been with the company now 24 years, so I'm either very unemployable or I like it there. So we'll go with the latter. But automation for us over the years, traditionally, I remember one product we bought off this company, and their forecast was 25,000 units a year. Today we do 6 million. So that's old school classic automation. So we built a machine that knocks them out. So when we think about, but that's great, it works in one factory, but it doesn't work enterprise wide. So when we think about automation now and all these tools like AI that I am still in learning mode on, we're trying to think about how can we make an impact across the enterprise. So if we look at our growth profile, and COVID in one sense was a blessing because it had accelerated the challenges of labor that are coming when you look at demographics in the US and Europe today. We've kind of peaked at workforce, but people are living longer and need med devices. So how do we? So if we didn't do anything, we'd have to hire 4,000 or 5,000 people to build product in the next few years. Where do we find those people? So how we're trying to approach it is, what are the activities that are common across our plants, and leveraging technology and AI and automation to eliminate them. So human visual inspection is a great example. About 40% of our people do that for a living. Now, it's not super rewarding. It's super important because the quality of products, you just can't get it wrong. But we're trying to leverage that technology to assist those people and help them to do other more value-added activities, and that works out great. And we've some super examples, and I'd say we're at the beginning of the journey, but it's something we have to solve, or we're not going to be able to get where we need to get there.
Katrina, talk to us about your role at Eaton, which is a global power management company, and you've got a big portfolio there for us.
Yeah, so we have about 226 manufacturing locations, 90,000 plus employees operating in 130 plus countries globally. So we're, as she said, in the intelligent power management business. We're in aerospace, vehicle, e-mobility, electrical. I hope that we were involved in the ecosystem that allows this building to be powered. So we make those products. There's a lot of work being done, obviously, in connected products. Artificial intelligence, how it can be applied, to software outcomes in this whole ecosystem that you guys you touch every day. And you think about the microgrid, how do utilities use different power, sources. There's so much involved in making that a reality. And then the challenges in that environment when you're trying to bring so many more connected products online, and then you're developing these more microgrid structures instead of the old, type of utility style, power engagement. So all of those various elements have, artificial intelligence or software design, with smart connected products. And I would say internally, when you think about in Industry 4.0, we're trying to figure out how do we make things more efficiently, what are the insights and business outcomes we can drive to make them more efficient. These technologies are part of that ecosystem. And if there's any company out there not actively promoting and trying to understand how you can apply that logic and those technologies, it's unfortunate because these things are starting to move faster and faster. So, it's, to your original question, it's in a little bit of everything we do. And then trying to drive sustainability within our corporation with our own footprint. How can we apply these technologies? And they're highly applicable and they're becoming, more point specific every day.
And some of the key arguments for automation is, of course, reducing costs, increasing efficiency, or improving the quality of a product or a service, and therefore maximizing, stakeholder value. So Katrina, I'll start off with you. How do you go about identifying worthwhile projects in intelligent automation, in terms of power management solutions? And I'm also interested to know how you also go about judging whether you invest or you do those internally.
Yeah, I think people need to get comfortable with the concept of fail fast. I don't think we all know exactly where to apply. We have return on investment structures that we put together in order to make determinations about what we're going to spend money on. But we're trying to spin up, multiple proof points at any given point in time to try to figure out where do you want to place some bets, what timeline do you want to provide those, and you're always tying that to business outcomes. So if there's specific challenges in the marketplace, you're trying to associate what you're working on, how you're spending money, what your cycle times and support will be in those different endeavors in order to understand what you're going to bet on. But I would tell you, I think we're betting on multiple things, and you're trying to do proof points in different ways. And then it's more of a VC mindset instead of the old world kind of ERP, large, give somebody $100 million to go do an ERP project. You do a lot of this stuff with proof points with a customer, with different work that you can do. Even if it's a farmer, with our connected product, can we help his uptime? Can we create some way to provide insights in order for him to do what he needs to do better, more efficiently, and more profitably? So you take specific proof points, and then you try to farm those ideas and work those spaces, and then things hit, and you continue to evolve those particular areas. That's how we do it.
And I want to go back to you. Paudie mentioned the pandemic and how that changed a lot of the outlook on automation. And actually, Jarrod, I'll start off with you because they were a significant issue during COVID in many industries, not just the food and agriculture. And how has that been resolved to an extent? And would you say the problems drove any implementation of solutions, coming from technology?
Well, the company has always had things that we want to improve on, but in terms of the pandemic, what it's enabled us to do is recognize very quickly the power of communication and AI, the tools that we use like Microsoft Teams, Zoom for many people. So they're more comfortable with that kind of technology. And now with many of the things you're hearing about, ChatGPT, anybody? No. People are becoming more comfortable with that. And we as a company have to recognize that this is how people work. And we can leverage these kinds of things and enhance our skills and our capabilities around that.
And Paudie, would you agree, or what would you have to say in terms of Boston Scientific's?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think For me, I'm an AI skeptic, or at least I was. And so as we stepped into the pandemic, incidentally, we had a collaboration between IBM, MIT, and ourselves, focused on a couple of different tools, using AI to help with forecasting and an allocation model. Well, the good news and bad news of the pandemic, it created a burning platform for us. So when we think about, supply shortages, we have about 17,000 products in our portfolio. Managing shortages across many of those to customers all over the world was a nightmare. So we quickly pivoted this team to work on a tool to help with that. And so I think to Katrina's point about failing fast, having something you really need to solve, no kidding around, will accelerate either an answer or a failure. And thankfully, in that particular case, we got a good answer. And we were able to kind of unburden our teams that were manually working through spreadsheets and allocating products and turning that into a machine. And our people could step up a couple of levels and think about the business versus kind of reacting to it every day. So we've another great example going now with forecasting, where older, more stable products in the kind of prime of their life cycle. The machine is way better at forecasting than 10 humans in a chain, and compounding kind of thoughts and ideas. So we've and answering your question about, do you do it yourself or do you get people outside to do it? I think it's a bit of both. You kind of start with someone outside, like in this particular case, but I think you got to develop the competency in house, and that's how you kind of scale it then and customize it for your business. So yeah, very, very. Now I've gone from skeptic to believer. Doesn't happen very often. Just ask my wife.
And Katrina, do you have any specific examples of how you've managed to leverage AI into your processes that have been successful?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about even engineering cycle times, and in our world, there's different standards in different parts of the globe. Can you create a product that could be universal across multiple different regions and territories? There's different codes, for building setups and power and electricity and all of that. We have things in our ecosystem with our developers that, are looking at how do we make that robust in such a way that you could use one device and for electricity, some sort of an electrical input across multiple regions or territories. Those are things that we're working on now. And then I would think, to your point about supply chain, it's been a challenge for everybody. The good thing about it, it's been a challenge for everything. For everybody, but a bad thing about it, it's been a challenge for everybody. So there's this situation where if you can get all of that data aggregated, if you can have something, go through it in a much faster way than 10 humans or 20 humans or 40 humans, put together all of those data points to try to figure out where are the correlations, how, what is really attributing to some of those causes. If you can be better than the next guy in your competitive space, you'll differentiate yourself. So we're doing all of those types of things within our ecosystem. And there's a ton of softwares out there that have that embedded in the capability, with AI or machine learning, et cetera, that are off the shelf these days and can partner with you very quickly on different things. You don't necessarily have to develop everything yourself. There's a lot of partners in the ecosystem that you can do proof points with as well. But there's a lot of different ways we're using it.
And Katrina, we have an audience question for you, because you talked about failing fast. But how can you fail fast without spending too much? And is it this a point where we, how much should we be investing in these new technologies at this stage? And we can also, widen that out to the rest of you as well. But Katrina, if you could start off with us.
Yeah, and I'd say there's a couple of different ways on this. A lot of the partners out in the ecosystem, they'll actually invest with you on different endeavors, because they want to continue, obviously, to learn and grow their particular brand in these spaces. So you can partner with third parties that are part of your ecosystem, and they'll spend a little money, you spend a little money, you'll get an outcome, and then you can jointly leverage that and take advantage of it. But to be honest, in these spaces, you can throw sensors on equipment, you can do all that stuff. Doesn't have to be horribly expensive. If you've got the idea and you try a very specific proof point, we're not talking about millions of dollars to do those proof points. You got to be very specific. You want to understand the business outcome you're hoping to drive, and you go old school a little bit and dial all the corporate fluff down and really just get to the basic and the intent of what you're trying to accomplish. And you'll be surprised how inexpensive some of these trials can be. So I would say it takes a lot for a technologist to think differently about making this 18-month or 2-year horizon or timeline. Think in agile, what are we going to do today? How can I do that piece of it? And then each day you're delivering something, and within 5 days you've delivered something that you used to take 3 and 4 and 5 months. It's not very expensive to work in those types of cycles, and you really have to train yourself differently to think differently about that, and think of it as your own money, and how do you want to leverage it most effectively.
And Jarrod, you were nodding to that. Do you agree?
Yeah, actually, when I started the group, one of my first hires was a CIA data forensics expert, and I had started the company or the group, and I looked at a consulting organization who came in and wanted tens of millions of dollars to do a demand forecasting solution, and I was like, this doesn't take that kind of money. So the gentleman that I hired essentially built the solution by himself in 2 months. This is the cost benefit of what we can do with AI. People who really understand the technology, who have the imagination, the creativity, who can go after it and go after projects very, very quickly. The cost benefit is massive.
And automation and AI, as we all know, it's grabbing a lot of news headlines. It is generating billions in investments here. And some tech companies in particular, you're seeing that them trying to integrate AI into everyday products. And then there's a question of whether that's going too fast. Should we be pumping the brakes and developing that regulation first? And we're hearing that even from the likes of Elon Musk saying that. So that's something to think about. Now, Katrina, from an investment point of view, are companies investing and releasing AI tech to the masses too early?
Yeah, we were actually having a small conversation about this. The power of it is amazing. The detriment of it is also pretty mind-boggling. Like, what will it lead to in 10 years? How will the lives of the entire planet change? Are we really being responsible stewards with that technology? And should we kind of slow it down so we can understand how do we absorb it? How do we consume it? How do we use it in a way that's ultimately positive as opposed to all the downside potential risks that are out there? I mean, you're talking about job replacement. I mean, we thought the coal industry, losing workers in the coal industry, then the retail environment changed with Amazon. Now we're talking about this thing can be used anywhere, anytime, anyhow, and it can affect, sort of the entire global network. I think we have a responsibility how we use it, how we roll it out, how we leverage it, and we need to be responsible stewards of that. And I think the tech may be a little bit ahead of but then you can't. You want to embrace the innovation of it, you want to embrace the advancement of it, but how do you do it in such a way that society can consume it without it being destroyed in harsh terms?
And I think even before this wave of interest in it, it was still a concern about AI, replacing jobs. But I'm interested in Paudie and Jarrod, in your respective industries. Will we still is there still going to be a place for human interaction, or how far is this going to go?
Oh, absolutely. That's my belief. I think we need both need to work together. And maybe just picking up on Katrina's point, I think one way we're thinking about throttling the adoption is really connecting it to a need, so that our environmental journey in Boston Scientific, I'm glad to report we were one of the 35% companies really investing in figuring out how to change our supply chain and using digital tools to model that. But we didn't start with, well, let's create a digital twin of the whole machine. We started with, what's the first question we're trying to answer? And then, okay, let's build a model around that. So we're kind of throttling the intake, if that makes sense. So again, but I think it is going to be a problem how fast it's going to come at us, as Katrina said, and we have to be responsible. But that's how we're going to manage it, I think. Focus it on questions we want to answer.
But on the flip side, I guess, you could say about investing in it too quickly. Is that also an issue that you perceive?
Industry, I don't think so. I don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough money to go around. Honestly, the consumers of this are going to be very cautious. Jarrod gave a great example of how we can be wise and how we use the resources to leverage AI. And I don't think companies are going to go out and write massive checks without being very focused on what we're trying to do.
And Jarrod, I'm interested, how do you guys use, or how can you use ChatGPT within your industry, within the food and supply chains?
Yeah, there's a couple questions here with that. So I'm going to go from one perspective where being a global food producer, we need to use AI to make things more efficient for food sustainability. In a whole lot of different areas where we can apply this kind of technology for more efficiency and whatnot, because it's extremely valuable. The other side is that, yeah, it's moving very quickly and very fast in ways that we have yet to really understand. I'm going to dive in very quickly on that with ChatGPT, generative AI, okay? My team sees the power of this thing. All of you who have been seeing with ChatGPT, the first time probably where many people in society have actually interacted with AI in a real sense, not the kind of tech you have on your phone or your Netflix, but really working with an AI tool, and you're seeing the power of this thing. Now, generative AI with image and language and everything else can be very powerful. The risky side, where out there in the industry, they're saying we got to put the brakes on this thing. Just this past week, there was an instance where somebody took the recording of somebody on the internet, because we all have recordings of our family, our faces, our voices, took that and generated a ransom saying, hey, I'm in danger, and they put that out there. Now, imagine how quickly this can go into a bad actor generating, all the images that you have on Facebook, the sound, the things you've used. From a society perspective, that is dangerous, because I don't want my grandparents or my parents, getting that phone call going, hey, Mom, I need money. Oh, I can see your image. I'm talking with you. I'm interacting with you. That is scary. Now, from a corporate perspective, we have to safeguard our own company to make sure I don't get a call from the CEO going, hey, go spin this dial or something. Well, I saw his face, I heard his voice, I see his image. This is how quickly the technology can go. That's just a very small example of where they want to put the brakes on. But we need to be thoughtful that we have to use this kind of technology, as a society and as a company. And we have to make sure that we have the regulations in place from a government perspective, and we adhere to global ethical standards, and we come together on this thing. So it's a responsibility for everybody here,
And do you think, I'm just thinking about, in the news at the moment, when you hear these announcements from Microsoft, when you hear them from Amazon, the stock suddenly pops up. But again, we've talked about the need for regulation, and maybe that being from the government level before, corporations decide what exactly they're going to do with it. How important of a part is that in how quickly you see it developing, or how quickly it is developing?
Well, on behalf of the company, we need to play a part, because we are consumers and users of this kind of technology on a massive scale. People that are in the industry who understand this technology recognize how quickly it's moving, so we have to participate. So we have to be good partners with our government, and the lawmakers and people who can actually enforce, rules around how this thing can be developed. But we all know it's moving very, very quickly, and it's not going to stop. But we have to take some of these things seriously and really take a look at it. When people who have knowledge of the space are saying, hey, we need to slow down here. And I gave the example, you're like, wow, hey, you're right. I get a call from somebody that I know, and it sounds like them, it looks like them, I hear the same voice. That's scary.
And I do want to pivot here just slightly and talking about more broadly diversity in tech, because that's an initiative that I know a number of you are working on within your respective businesses. I'd love to start with you, Katrina, on how you are working with that within your company.
Yeah, so diversity in the cultural, ethnicity, gender, and those particular categories. In this space, you would think that there's more balance in the space, but there really isn't. 8 out of every 10 people you'll find are are male from a gender perspective, and then there's different ethnicities involved. It's very difficult really to grow a diverse slate of talent within our companies, and then add to it that we're all in, I'm industrial, you've got some medical pieces, you're farm and agriculture. It's those industries themselves don't necessarily lend themselves to diverse slates. Eaton, quite honestly, is one of the best, I think, at managing this. If you look at the C-suite, it's one of the most diverse C-suites out there. We actually have committed percentages that we're looking for. Do you have a diverse slate that you're interviewing? You know, how do you look at, you know, farming for talent, building those networks? Eaton puts a lot of energy behind that diversity and recognizes the power of it. We just moved, and my team, our diversity by 2% just in Q1, because we're very focused on driving, you know, that talent. But you've got to make everything, single touch point that you do and job opportunity that you have, it's got to be part of that central dialogue to make a difference.
And we do actually have to wrap up now. You know, we could have talked about that for a whole lot longer. So I want to say thank you, first of all, to all of our panelists. Thank you very much, Jarrod Anderson of ADM, Katrina Redmond of Eaton, and Paudie O'Connor of Boston Scientific. And as I said, we could have carried on for a long longer. So thank you very much.
Thank you.